It's my honor and privilege to moderate a panel of truly exemplary individuals here on stage with me. The theme perhaps could be conversations with consequences. We're going to talk about localization today. I'll start with Degan Ali, Executive Director of Adesso. Give us some honesty, boldness, and vulnerability.
Okay. So I'm here to use my privilege and my access to these spaces to move and change behavior to decolonize philanthropy. And I try to do my best to speak, to represent in my flawed way those who don't have access to these spaces. Let's talk about the things that need to change. So the Council on Foundations has said that about only 12% of foundation funding is going to Global South organizations in their last report. I think that's actually a very generous number. I think it's much less than that. That's just philanthropy. We're not talking about ODA, OECD donors, the bilaterals. We're just talking about philanthropy. In the humanitarian space, it's estimated to be about 2%. When I started this journey in 2014 during the World Humanitarian Summit, we were at 0.2%. And I was just had the honor of listening to in climate justice activist, youth activist, and they was talking about how in the climate justice space, youth groups are only funded 0.76%. And that includes both Global North youth movements and Global South youth movements. So if you include just the South alone, it's going to be less than 0.76. So these are just some of the realities of what we're talking about. So if I'm to be bold, I would also like to kind of change a little bit about our perception about the space that we hold here, and to say that we're all philanthropists. I argue that the biggest philanthropists are actually not in the room, and they are the poor. They are the marginalized. They are the biggest philanthropists. And we ignore them, and we think that philanthropy is attached to having a large endowment or being a stockholder of a major company like Amazon or Facebook. But we forget that the poor every day exercise philanthropy, and they probably exercise the most riskiest, costliest, and biggest philanthropy. When you're living on $1 a day, to give 20% of that, that's very risky to your neighbor, to make sure that your neighbor eats with you, to take the time out of your schedule to give free childcare, hours of childcare to your neighbor's child, because the mother is working as a housekeeper for somebody and living in these rich neighborhoods of Nairobi. That's the kind of philanthropy that happens every day that's invisible, that we don't think about. So having said that, once you think about that, I think we need to start thinking of philanthropy as a gift. And it's a bounty that is a blessing. We need to stop thinking about it as a transaction. We need to realize that those who have should feel honored and privileged to be giving to those who have not. That it's not about getting a tax break. It's not about, I'm a program officer and I have to do my job and move this money. That I have the honor of actually taking my bounty, what has been blessed to me, and giving it to those who don't have that privilege. So I feel like that's an important thing that we have to remember, that this is not just a job, that this is an opportunity, missed opportunities, as Andy said. Now, in terms of vulnerability, I would just say that I had the honor to be on the cover of Social Investor with Chandler Foundation. I'm very grateful to them. And first of all, they were so generous in putting a Global South woman hijabi on the cover, number one. Number two, they said, well, can you go to a studio and take some pictures? And I was like, no, I want to go to my home. I want to go to Somalia, and I want you to hire African photographers in my space. And they said yes, and they'd never done that in any cover. So we don't we need to understand that decolonization is not just about moving money, but it's about really transforming some things that seem so simple and just basic, like taking pictures, is extremely powerful.